So the select case is the other part of the decision, which is the diamond shape. And this is when you have usually like a list of items that you want to select from, right? And you can convert back and forth between the select case and the if and else block. It's just that one will produce more lines of code than the others. And again, it's just depending on how you want to use it. That's totally up to you. Okay. Let's see in the book, I think it should be chapter 4. Let's see if we have that. Okay, so chapter 4, section 4.3 is the select case blocks. Okay. So this is the simple syntax for the select case. At the top box here, you see the different cases. Okay, so the keywords are in blue here, currently in bluish color. The select case, and then you have your expression here. Your test is like test expression is you want to test a condition, what that condition is, and then because again, same thing as if you have a jar of marbles, and if your region set a marble, if you randomly select one of those marbles, you want to check what the color marble is, but you don't know, right? So you can say if that expression, or if the marble is red, then you go here. If it's not red, then you check the next case. If the case is blue, then you put the statements in here, and so on. Okay, so you can have one case, or you can have as many case statements in here if you want. And you can also have what's called a case else statement here. This is the last statement. This is the catch-all statement. If none of the above cases are true, then it's going to fall into this last case here, the case else. And if you use the case else, it's optional. You don't have to use it. It's optional. Just like the if and else block, the else block is also optional. So if you use this one here, then it has to be the last statement in the case here. It cannot be above any of the other cases. Okay? It has to be the last one, the catch-all. So example down here is like you want to, let's say you read a number. Okay, you read a number from the user, and you don't know what the number is. And the number is stored inside this variable called int day number, right? And the number could be anywhere from 1 to whatever the number is. Okay, so you check the number because you don't know what it is. You say if the number is case 1, if that is true, then you want to output to the field called label day of week dot text is Monday, right? If that's the case. If it's not 1, if it's a 2, then you do that for Tuesday, and all the way down to 7, it's a weekend. If it's not between 1 and 7, any of these cases, this is the catch-all, right? The default. That means that it's an invalid number, and you want to again prompt the user to enter a number between 1 and 7 only. Okay, so in this situation, right? So it's gonna fall into one of these cases. It has to, because we have the catch-all in the else case. Okay. So here's another one. This one here is a text. So you're reading a text from a text field, just like let's just say, from the student name or the employee name, right? You can check the name.text. If that text is equal to accounting or John, or however that is, and if that's the major in this case, then you would say the department is going to be business. Right? If it's marketing, then it's also business, and so on. So kind of similar. And you have the else at the bottom here. That means if it's none of the above, then it's an other major. Okay, so you can compare numbers, strings, and other, true and false, and so on, which is not really useful in this case, true and false. But whatever you test here, this type here, it's a data type, this data type must match we call this the value here. So the value you are comparing this accounting to this field here must match have the same data type. You cannot compare a string to a number. Okay, so that's what you can see that all these are just text only, and the previous one, all these are numbers only. So int day number, I'm expecting an integer number, so I have to match all these numbers only. You cannot compare with other data type. Visual Basic will throw an error and it will cause your program to not compile. Okay, so the data type has to match. So again, another one here. This one here is using a comparison. So you have an order number here. In this case, the D here. You see some of the examples in the book, the author might put the letter D right there and next to the number. I mean, it's forcing this number here to be of type decimal. Okay, so decimal type. If you don't put it, then it could be an integer, right? And what's the difference between integer and decimal?
Integer is a whole number.
Right. Integer is a whole number, and it's also much smaller, right? So you put D there, that means it's a decimal number. That means you could have decimal points in there as well. Okay. So and also it's a bigger size. So so you can explicitly force the number to be a decimal. And again, if you look in the code here, see DEC, the author uses that prefix to denote that this variable here is a decimal type. And I think he also used the INT for integer type. You can do that if you want. You don't have to, but you could. So in this case, you said if the decimal number order amount here is greater than 500, right, then you do this code here. Else, right, if it's not, but if it's greater than 400, then you do that, and so on. So the keyword is case is. Okay, so the word is here is you have to put it there. If you don't put it, if you just say case and then the greater than sign 500D, whatever it is, and I think Visual Basic will automatically add that for you, the is in there. So again, same rule applies. You have all four cases here, and then the else case goes at the bottom. Okay, so here's another one. You can have a range of numbers or a range of text as well to compare. So you have a grade level, that could be a student grade level, right? Here you can say if it's a level between 1, 2, 3, it's inclusive. Okay, 1 and then 2 and the keyword 2 and then number 3, inclusive, both of those. Then the grade exam will be elementary, early elementary, right? And then if it's if the number falls between 4 and 6, then you get a different grade, and so on. So you can do that as well. It's really short in this case. If you were to rewrite this in the if block, it would be much different. You say, so this line alone here, you would say if int grade level is greater than equal to 1, right? And grade level is less than or equal to 3, then you follow that. So you can see the line of code is much longer than here. Just say 1, 2, 3. Okay? You can do this way, or you can have it so that you can select a specific number range in there if you want. Right? So you can say if int grade is, instead of 1, 2, 3, you can say 1, 2, 3, or like here. You can choose a different number range in there as well. If it matches with any one of these numbers, then this case is true, and it will execute the block of code. You can have a mix of these range numbers plus a range from the 2, 12 to 16 inclusive, right? Because sometimes it's too long to list all of them there. You just say, 2, 4, 7, 12 through 16, and then 22, and then 25 through 75. Okay, so all those ranges will be compared, and if it matches, then it will fall into that case. So it's very flexible, very short to write. So in this case here, for example, if you were to write this into a if block, it's going to be a very long statement. This one is going to be kind of same. It's very long as well, because you have to compare this with this with that, this with this, and so on. Each of those will have a comparison between that. So this situation is much simpler to use the select case. Okay. So we know that already. Okay, so I think that's it for this one here. And then so let's do an example in the program here. Okay, so let's create a new project. We'll call this one here the this is I'll call chapter 4 select case. Okay, chapter 4 select case. So Windows Forms application. So here's our form. It's pretty tiny. I'll make it big. And let me turn on my solution and my properties. Also my toolbox. Use the common tools. Sure, so why don't we add a input box, and we'll enter some data, and then we'll do some type of comparison with using the select case, and then we'll also convert that into the if block. So we'll see how they are similar and how they're different. So let's add a text box right here somewhere. We can make it I'll make it large font. Okay, you click on that. The font size is up here in the font property. The size I'll use maybe 20, so you can see on the screen. Okay. So what should we name this? The name will be, I guess just input is fine. So txt input. And then we'll need a button to process this. So drop a button here somewhere, and we'll make it you can style it, make it a little bit colorful if you want, it's fine. The name will be just btn let's call it submit is fine. And the text will be just submit. Again, you make the font large enough to be visible on the screen. I'll make it maybe, I don't know, 30? Yeah, 30 is cool. Okay, and then right below it, we're going to add a list box. So we'll output the result to the list box, so you can see any of the previous inputs as well. So we see the previous result. So grab a list box and then put it right below that button and resize it to be like something like that. or however you want to do it's fine. And we'll also want to add, we'll change the font size to a little bit bigger than that. So again, I'll put 20. Yeah, I think 20 is okay for mine. The name of this list box will be just LST result. Okay, so it should be empty, nothing in there. And just remember that if you want to add, if you want to initialize this list box, you can click the little arrow here, the black arrow, and go and then click edit items, and that will allow you to add items here, right? So if you do that, and it adds some default values there. Okay, you do that from here, or you can also do from the properties window down here in the items collection, click the ellipsis, and you get the same place. Okay, so delete that, and then it should be empty. Okay, so that is our form. And I also want to make sure my form always display in the center of the screen. So you click on your form, and down here on the end bottom here, I have the start position. You can set that to the center screen every time, so it's always center. So you have to drag it from the left every time. Okay, are we all here? All right, so we're gonna, in this case, we're just gonna double click the submit button to add the procedure to, or the event to allow us to add the code in here, so we can start processing. Bless you. So in here, I'm gonna turn off my toolbox. I don't need that. I need some space in here. So here we have the application, the code view, and we can start putting some stuff in here. So we have an input box called txt input. So we need to, we could set a variable here, so it's much shorter to type. If you leave it as is, you can use it to do some, processing, but you always have to type the whole name. Txt, input.txt is too long, so we can make it really short. And let's say want to compare, kind of similar to the one in the book, but let's compare some characters, just a single character from A to whatever it is. Okay, so I'm going to declare a variable called just input is fine, and this is going to be of type character char. Okay. And then you can read it right away, assigned from the txt input .text. So that should be the first character. Or we can make this into a guessing game, you know what I mean? Right? You can say, guess a character, guess my magic character from A to Z. Okay? So we could say dim magic character. This is our character. We could set this as a constant if you want, right? Or just say J is the magic character. Doesn't like that. What's wrong? Oh, that single quote is a comment. Different language you use a single quote. Like in Java, you use a single quote for a single character, double quotes for a string. So confusing sometimes. So that's our magic character. We're going to compare that to a magic character, right? And then we'll output that to the maybe we'll do that as a how do we do this? Yeah, we'll do both of them. We'll do the select, and then we have a if inside the select case. Maybe. So we'll do a select case. So the syntax is select case. If you hit enter now, and then, well, it needs to add the end select case here. And you need to add the condition here. What are we testing here? We're testing the input, okay? We're testing the input. I'm selecting the input, and each character that comes to the input, I'm gonna compare the input, and then we'll say, you know, the input is not a magic number, and they have to keep testing that until they get it, right? So you could do a very simple one. You can say case, okay, and then next is the value. You want to compare this to this value. So the actual value, you cannot say input is equal to 4 or equal to A. You can't do that. You cannot put the input here again. You have to. That's just the value of the input. What can it be? Case, if it's like the J, if that is the case, right? Then we found the magic number, right? If that is the case, then you can say the text output result, known as LST result, items, add. So we add the message in here. So you found the magic character or something. If it's not J, then that's everything else. So we have the else part. And then you can put a different message. Result the items dot add. You can say no, try again. So I mean, very simple case, right? Just two cases. If it's J, then that. If everything else, then no, try again, and they keep entering the letter until they find it. So instead of J here, what should I put here instead of the character J here? What should that be replaced with? I'm hard coding that in there. I shouldn't do that. Yeah, the magic char, right? So you can put the magic char here. Again, it has to match the data type. If it's a character, then this has to be a character. It has to be character. Right? I can't put 1 here. If I do that, notice you have a red line says integer is not doesn't match the input. Input is a char. Okay, so you have to match the data type. And if I change this to letter K or something, then that's changed automatically. Okay, so let's save that and run and see if it's something that we have in mind. So let's run this. Again, notice that it should be centered on the screen, right? And again, not validating anything, so you want to make sure you put characters only. If you put a number, it will fail, it will crash, because we didn't validate. So we just have to assume put a number, and a character. So you put like character A. If you click submit, we should see the expected result of no, try again, right? It doesn't match. And then if you put in J, you get try again. Why is that? Yeah, it's a lowercase, right? So remember, when you compare characters and letters, they are compared by the ASCII number. So lower J and uppercase J are different. So if you want to make sure they are, if you don't care about case, then you have to make sure they're both either lowercase or uppercase, and you have to explicitly force it to be in either case. Okay, so until you get the capital J, then that should work. Oh yeah, it's too big, so it's kind of off screen here. Okay, so very simple, very simple case. You can have a little bit more fun. You can say, if it's A, then say higher. Like the game, right? Go higher. If it's L, then go lower. If you do that, so why don't we do something like that? So I'm gonna go back to my form and make this a little bit wider. I think it's a little bit too small, too short for my result. So I'll put like something like that. Okay. So let's modify this. And we'll just say if it's if it's a magic, then we got it. So in between here, right? If it's you could say between A to I, right? Oh, I'm sorry, double quote. This between A and I, then we want the message to say go higher, right? Then we'll say let's t result the items add just say higher. And we do the same for the other case. So say case JK, okay, to Z, then LST result items add lower until they find it. So in this case, this may not be needed anymore, but we'll leave it in here anyway. Just in case if you enter like a character 5, a number, that was treated as a character. So we're talking about only uppercase. So that means that we have to force this input to be uppercase. So it doesn't matter what the input is. If it's lowercase or uppercase, you have to force it. So how do we change this to uppercase? In here, I think we can do like to upper. How do you do to upper here? I don't remember. Uppercase, let's see. I thought it's to upper, but it's not to upper. U case. Yeah, I have to okay, I have to look it up. I don't remember the I know the other languages says that to uppercase, that to lower, but in Visual Basic I don't remember. I'll check it out in a bit. But for now, I'll just say we have this range of characters here. And if you want, also you could go to your form. One way is to do in the code here, which I don't remember that syntax, but also in your code here you can go and then force it to be uppercase. Okay, you go click on that that here and go to your properties, and there should be one about the character casing here. Okay, you can force it to be uppercase. Okay, so that when you input it, it's always uppercase. That's another way to do it. All right, so let's run this. And then if you type A, notice that it's all uppercase, right? You force it to be uppercase. And if you submit, it should say higher. And if you go, T, and we'll just say lower. And you keep going until you find the correct number. Then finally we know that's going to be somewhere in here. Found it, right? So this could be one of those games. Magic number game.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If we because if we put a lowercase in like setting, you think if we end up doing like A to Z, but we put A to Z equal lowercase, can we make it say like it needs to be capital in that way, or will it interfere with the current cases that we have?
You mean down in the code?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, if you make it lowercase, then it has to match the case. That's all. Yeah. If you put like because I force it to be uppercase, if it's lowercase, then they won't match. Yeah. So you can say to them, I don't know, case matters or something. Okay. So any questions how this is constructed? So we got this part, which is great. So now let's convert this to an if and else block. The same thing. So how would you write this into a if and else block? We do it down here. We got the same result, just change all these into an if and else block. So how should we do this?
Well, I mean, first off, you probably wouldn't want to do A to I because I don't think in an if else block are we able to say A to I.
Right. You can't. Right.
Specific, don't we?
Yeah, you can't do that.
So we should make it if J you found it, and then if else, then try again. Otherwise, then we're going to be sitting here for like 30 minutes doing each individual letter.
Well, there's another way to do that, right? You can do if it's you can just say higher or lower, right? There's a range. Number of the and the or. Okay. So what's the first thing? We need to check the input, right? Check the input against the magic char. So we can say when we have a lot of cases, one case is we found it. The found case will be when they match. So we can say what if input equals magic char, right? If that is the case, then we found it. Okay. That's this part here. So we can copy this and put it here. Found it. Else if. So we have the else if block. Okay, else if this case. So that means if input is equal or greater than A, but equal or less than I, that's what it means, right? Then we say higher. Okay? So how do we write that? So you have to compare every case. This compared to that, this compared to that. So we'll say if input is greater or equal to A, that's one part. The second part here is it an and or is it an or? And, right? Because it can be or. Or I mean, if it's a Z, then that is true already. But you have a limit, upper bound and then the lower bound. So lower bound is A, and then the upper bound is I. Input is less than or equal to I. If it falls in that boundary, then we say go higher. Okay? And then you do the same thing for one more case. This case k to z. So we have one more else if. And this case we'll do a boundary between k and z, so kind of same thing. If input is greater than or equal to k and input is less than or equal to z, then we want to say go lower. Copy this, put it here. So lower. And then if you want to put the else part, it's exactly the same thing. This is just basically else. If none this is true, then we'll just say try again. In this case, if they enter a character, a number instead. Assuming we're not validating. So here we explicitly put the character a and I here. We could just say, lower bound, upper bound, lower bound 1, upper bound 1, lower bound 2, upper bound 2 as a variable name. Okay, so we can change that anytime. So let's comment these out, highlight that, and then click the comment icon at the top here, the one with the little 2 green lines. So now we have the if and else block, and see if this still works. So save and run. Let's try A. Right, go higher. It still makes sense. Go to G, and we still say higher. But K is lower. If you put 1, it would say try again, right? Because it's not a character. But it will be treated as a character because it's expected will be converted to a character. So if you put J, then we got the correct number and correct character, so you found it. Okay? Any questions how this is done? So you can see that the different cases here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which just doesn't change that much in this case. So here again, here is inclusive. Case A and I is inclusive. Here this is inclusive. This makes it inclusive. If you don't want to include that, then you could do something else. What's the like here, for example, this one's kind of hard, but on the left side, instead of I, you can just say less than J, right? Which is the founding, which is that number, the character, but you don't want to put an equal sign here. If you do that, right, less than me, it does not include J, so not inclusive. Okay, so lots of ways how you can solve this type of problem. But I'll put it back as it was. Okay, so now again, we could comment this out for now. I'm going to go back into the select case and uncomment the select case. So click the other icon, uncomment. Just make some additional lines here. So it shows you how you can, what if you want to be selective? Let's just say not between A through I, but only certain characters between A through I, and not all of them, right? So instead of A through I, you could say, here you could put like, you can select the characters. If A, if it's C, if it's E, if it's only those 4, then go higher. Right? If it doesn't match, then it will go out to the else, try again, right? That's what it means. If you select B, because B is not part of it, so therefore it fails this case, and B is not between K and Z, so it's going to go to the case else part, right? You can select a range of characters this way. And likewise, you can do that here as well. If it's K, if it's from M to maybe like T, and then also if it's Y and Z only. So anything outside of the like T, the U, V, W, X, all those are out. And those will fall out into the else case. Right, so you can have a combination of character this way. So this one here is easy to do. But imagine you have to write this into your select case. I mean, in the if block. What do you think that's going to look like?
Well, the combos would be or, wouldn't it be?
Where?
Or the combos were in the case like A to A, C, that would be or, right?
Yes.
Like that, right?
That'll be or. Yeah. Right. This or that or that or that, and it'll be true. Right. So if you want to do that, then in here, you have to change this to the or case, right? If it's A or C, so if input is equal to A, or input is equal to C, or input is equal to E, or input is equal to I, then that's going to go really long over here, somewhere to the right. Then you have another, this block here will be also very long, depending on how many characters you have here. So when you have that type of situation, then the select case becomes advantageous. Okay, because it's shorter to write. Okay, so I mean, if you run it now, it should still work. Except if you select B, B is not part of it, so B will be out of the block. If you put in M, it will say go lower. You put X, it will say not try again, right? It doesn't fall into that case. Okay, so until you find J, and then you found it right. So you have a lot of flexibility using the select case. And not just that, you can also have nested case inside a select case as well. What if you find like A, C, E, or I, and if you want to do something else in here, right? You could do a different type. What if you have like 2 inputs? Okay, 2 inputs, and then the first input, if it's A, C, or E, or I, then you can check the second input in here. So you can do again, for example, select case, and then maybe like I don't know. I'm just for example here, but you can do a select second case in here, and then you have another case in here, case 1, and you do something here, case 2, you do something there, and then case else, you do something there. Okay, so you can have a nested case inside another case, and then you can repeat that inside another nested case in here, and you keep going down the list here, just like you have your nested if and else block. And in here you can have your if block in here. If something is true, then you have your if block in here. So it's just a block of code. You can have as many lines of code as you want in that piece of block of code. And so in when the case A, C, E, I is true, then everything here will execute, right? So you can put a lot of code in there to do whatever you want to do it. So you say if this is true, then you could, load a different form, show a different screen, and then on that different screen you can have different selections, and then you do another case select in here, and then once this case is true, then you load another screen. So you can see how it goes like a forever in this situation until you find the solution and you exit out of that program. Okay. So we just pretty much touch the surface of what we can do with select case, but one simple select case like this can lead to a really big application, because one of these cases could lead into other forms. So like just say when you start out your your tax form, or you do your some type of application, it will ask you if you are a male or female, and then that leads into a different form, and then they ask you age range, it adds into a different form, and that will go on until you finish the application. Okay, so you have a lot of diamond shapes in between, and nested into other diamond shapes as well. Okay, so this, I think this, I will stop here. So just make sure that when you compare your input or the expression here, you have to match the same type of data type. Okay, this is not true for PHP. Okay, PHP is different. PHP is a different beast altogether. PHP is confusing because, and also in JavaScript, I can compare here a character to a number, to an object, to a something else, all completely in the same select block. So it can get very confusing in that case. But with this here, it's what's called that's why Visual Basic is a strictly or strongly typed language, right? You have to have the data type declared. You have to declare the data type so that it's all matched. In PHP and JavaScript, you don't have to do that. So anytime this value can be changed to anything else, and it will all be valid. And that's why it gets confusing when you have the select case. Okay, I will stop here. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back, and then we will continue to the next chapter, which is chapter 5. And we'll do the first part of it, which is the function procedures. And then next we will do the subroutines. Okay, so I'll see you back in 10 minutes.